my name is Chrissy and welcome to my channel. I am doing a May wrap-up, and technically it's like May and the last week of April wrap-up. Mainly because if I were to do May, I just have 4 books. I'm getting back into the swing of things of reading, and I'll take what I can get at this point. Hopefully at some point I'll be in a better place and have a better routine to read more books throughout the month, and hopefully my son will start holding his bottle soon. His own bottle. So that way my hands will be free to do other things. We're crossing our fingers here. Anyway, we're going to get into the books that I read. I read the first book at the end of April, but it is Feed by Mira Grant. This is the first of the Newsflesh trilogy, and it is a zombie book. I don't really consider it the typical zombie story, but also I don't really have a lot of experience reading zombie books. I will just say that normal zombie stories that I've seen, mainly like TV shows and movies, are more about like the zombie apocalypse, so that society just crumbles when people start turning into zombies. And with this book, that doesn't happen. So this takes place after the zombie apocalypse kind of happens, and society has persevered through this. So society is still going on. There's still like plane rides, there's still cities and stores and apartment buildings, and people are still living their day-to-day lives. But it's how to deal with that on top of having zombies randomly try and eat you. And in this book, we follow George and her brother Sean and their friend Buffy as they go on this, I don't want to call it a great adventure. They go on the campaign trail following a guy who is trying to become the next president of the United States, and they're covering his campaign. This is a big break for them as blogging has blown up. Like there's more credence in blogs and people who utilize that platform, and traditional journalism still happens, but blogging is kind of becoming more on par and I believe more looked at for the truth, mainly because of what happens when the zombie apocalypse started. This book is really zombies and political intrigue, which is interesting to read about, and I was very I devoured this book fairly quickly, especially for someone who is in a reading slump for many months. But I liked it a lot. I do recommend it. It's not, like, there's action involved. It's not, I would not put this as a typical action oriented zombie book. As I said, I haven't read a lot of them. But there is action involved, but it's more about the politics and the campaign and kind of people trying to, sabotage this campaign. It's more about that and how to do that with zombies rather than just fighting off like a horde of zombies. So I like this a lot. I would definitely recommend for people to read it. The next book that I read, I also read at the end of April, and I was trying to hold off until May, but I was really excited to read it, especially getting out of a reading slump. And I was supposed to read it for the Asian Readathon. I'm going to still consider it having been read for the Asian Readathon. I just read it early. A couple of days early, and I read it in one day, and that is The Bride Test by Helen Hong. This follows Kai, who has autism, and his mom is really worried that he's not going to have a wife at any point in time, and she enlists this gal named Mai in order to have an arranged marriage for her son. So she's in Vietnam, and she asks this gal, hey, meet my son and marry him. I think you'd be really cool, and I like your look, your personhood, the way you conduct yourself, and I'd really like it if you married my son. Mai, who later on calls herself Esme, decides, you know what, I need a better life for myself and my child, and it's not going to hurt too much to meet this guy, and I bet I can get him to agree to this at some point in time, or at the very least I'll try my best. And so she goes, meets Kai, and it's about their love story from there. All in all, it's just a really sweet book, and I like the interactions between the characters. I like that we get to see Michael and Stella again. It's a romance. There's sexy times, non-sexy times. Now getting to the books that I actually read in May. Granted, I started this book in April after I finished The Bride Test, but I finished it in May, so I think that counts. And that is The Husband's Secret by Leanne Moriarty. It follows Cecilia, Rachel, and Tess. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritties of the plot, mainly because there's a lot that happens. Just know that Cecilia's husband is the one who has a secret. Rachel is carrying grief with her from things that have happened many years ago with her children. And Tess is dealing with her husband and her cousin not having an affair, but they they admit to Tess that they love each other and that they didn't do anything, but they love each other. And so, you know, how to move forward from that. And Tess, you know, rightfully gets mad, and it goes from there. And all three of them tie in. Now, granted, when you first read this book, like, the secret's not told right away. It's like close to mid of the book where the secret gets revealed, but you kind of guess what it is early on, just due to the plot points of the other two people. I wouldn't count this as a mystery, but I don't want to ruin what the secret is or how it gets revealed and all those other things. I did like this book a lot. I like Liane Moriarty's writing. I feel like a lot of people who don't necessarily read adult fiction have a misconception about adult fiction sometimes, of that it's really dry and it's about all these boring adult things like paying bills and doing taxes, cheating on your spouse. And granted, this book has that, but the way that Liane Moriarty writes adults, I think, keeps up with the silliness of people. So as a 32-year-old, my life is not always just a serious escapade of, you know, going to work and, you know, being a serious, mature person. In fact, I'm fairly immature. I don't know how I survived. And I'm just, you know, trying to do my best. I still watch anime. I still play video games. I still do all those things. So when I read Liane Moriarty's works, granted, her characters may not do the things that I do, but at the very same time, their feelings and how they portray those feelings, also some of the actions that they do are more in line with that thought process. Is that even though they're adults, that doesn't mean that they don't have a silly side, and that doesn't mean that they don't have like a childish, immature side, and in fact they do. So that's what I really like about Liane Moriarty's writing, is that she manages to portray that aspect of being an adult and into a very relatable way. The next book I read was one I had wanted to read when I first bought it, but I ended up not, for I don't even know what reason. But I did read it for the Asian Readathon, and that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This book is an epic fantasy, and there's so much going on. I'm going to try and summarize it as best I can. It is about a girl named Rin who just wants a better life for herself, and she ends up going to this university and ends up getting enlisted into a war. That's kind of a very vague and short summary of this book. I did do a book review of this book, both written and a video. I will link the video one down below if you want to go check out my full thoughts on this book. It is a spoiler-free review, by the way. I will be reading the next book. I don't know when I will get it to it, or when I'll get a chance to buy it, mainly because I've been humming and hawing over whether or not to get it on the Kindle or whether or not to get it in a physical paperback or hardback, whichever it is now. And mainly, the reason why I'm kind of humming and hawing is Kindle will be faster and it's a little bit more convenient for me to read right now. I find it easier to read on my Kindle when I have my son in my arms rather than a physical book. But I do want to, you know, support my local bookstores, so this is kind of where I'm at. I don't know exactly what I'll do quite yet, but I do plan on getting the next in the series soon-ish. The next book I read is Emperor Mollusk versus the Sinister Brain by A. Martinez. I'm a big fan of A. Martinez. I love his work. This is a humorous sci-fi about the ex-warlord of Earth, and he's just trying to, you know, somewhat enjoy his retirement. He's not enjoying it a lot, but he's just trying. And how he's trying to figure out who's sent assassins to kill him, and it follows that adventure. It is a very funny narrative piece. It's not my favorite work by A. Martinez. There are other ones that I like far better, but it was a nice, fun type read, and I do recommend his books, and I'd recommend this one as well, especially if you like more of the sci-fi genre than fantasy. Then this one is definitely one that you can get into if you're looking for something to make you laugh. The last book I read for this month is The Colorless, Tsukuru, Tazaki, and His Years of Pilgrimage by Haruki Murakami. Again, I have made it through that title without stuttering too much. This book follows a guy who's just trying to figure out later on in his life why his friendship group from high school had kicked him out back in his college years, and he's doing so at the behest of his somewhat-ish girlfriend, Seta. That's a very short summary of things that happen in that book. I did a review of this, and I'll link that down below as well. But I wasn't the biggest fan of this novel. There are certain parts where I liked a lot, some of the feelings and emotions that Haruki Murakami managed to invoke, I thought was pretty good and relatable in some instances, but there was quite a few plot points that I thought were just not good whatsoever. There are certain actions that were done in the book that I just felt were weird and out of place. So yeah, it was kind of a, like, not the worst book I've ever read, but certainly one that I don't think I would have read if I knew those plot twists ahead of time. So those are the books that I read in end of April-ish May. Have you read any of these books? What did you think about them? Did you like what you read? Do you have any recommendations for me based on what you heard that I read and which ones I liked? By all means, comment down below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. If you like hearing me talk about books, you can hit that subscribe button. And as always, I hope you get lost in the book.